Hey, hey! Have you ever wanted to play Crazy Taxi while also being as obtuse as possible? Great, me too. So please allow me to introduce to you the third best Crazy Taxi game on the Sony PSP. Simple 2500 series, portable volume 9, The My Taxi!
I've never heard of this game in my life.
How the fuck, you fake gamer, have you not heard of The My Taxi!
Next you'll be telling me you haven't heard of fucking Sneezies.
If this looks familiar, that's because it's a port of... God damn it. Simple 2000 series, The Taxi! You Are the Driver, a PS2 game from 2004. Europeans might know this as Taxi Rider if you exclusively bought your PS2 games in convenience stores after the PS3 released. And as a side note, the notion that this game released in Europe the same year as fucking MotorStorm is unreasonably funny. You may have heard of the Simple series of video games before. They tend to occupy massive chunks in the middle of big game lists because there is an assload of these things. The various Simple series releases are basically ultra-budget shovelware, released by Bandai Namco under their "this game is probably a piece of shit" subsidiary, D3 Publisher. That's not entirely fair, I suppose. D3 Publisher has D3 published a lot of games, many of which are actually pretty good, but it's not entirely unfair to describe D3 as primarily a shovelware publisher either. They've published roughly 600 games in the Simple series alone, and most of their other releases are tie-in games for children's movies and television shows, and stuff like that. It's interesting that this series' naming shtick is that they began the titles with Simple every time, so you knew you were buying a bargain bin game no matter where you found it. Normally, budget games do everything they can to convince you that you're getting something just as good as the latest full-price releases. For what I think are obvious reasons, I've played relatively few Simple series games. Okay, it's mostly that I don't speak Japanese, but these games aren't really anything special. Take a popular game, make it legally distinct, and then suck out anything resembling personality or mechanical depth with a bendy straw. That's how it was in 2000, and that's unfortunately still how it is today. The My Taxi is a little beyond what I expected going in. It's tempting to call it Crazy Taxi made in Roblox, but honestly, that's been done better. And I'd wager a guess that the people who made this probably haven't been making games since the 90s. Tamsoft have, and you'd recognize some of their output too. Battle Arena Toshinden, Chorokyu, Senran Kagura, and Oni-Chanbara. That last one actually began as part of D3's Simple 2000 series. That is to say, I don't believe Tamsoft are incompetent, but if this video is your introduction to their output, you'd be forgiven for making that judgment. What I find most astounding about games like Simple 2500 series, Portable Volume 9, The My Taxi! Is that they seemingly manage to understand the basic pillars of a good game's design, while also somehow managing to completely fuck up every nuance to the point that you'd have to wonder if they ever played the source material. Crazy Taxi is relatively simple as far as 3D driving games go, so cloning it should be as simple as designing an urban area that a taxi could quickly navigate via jumps, boosts, and drifts. The My Taxi has none of those.
I'll give you a hint.
I don't know, but maybe.
Ah! Fuck off, you fucking guy. Get out of the street.
Okay, it has boosts, but they're not a mechanical skill like in Crazy Taxi. They're a consumable power-up you have to find in the world. Other than that, there's nothing crazy about these taxis. They can't drift, they can't smash, and they can't jump. No, literally, if you drive off a ledge, you just magnetize to the ground like big rigs. But like a lot of other shitty racing games, The My Taxi's biggest, simplest sin is that it's fucking slow! The jokes write themselves. Tedious taxi, comatose cab, unpleasant Uber, lethargic lift. Headache hire car? This all means that The My Taxi's moment-to-moment gameplay is a whole lot of holding the accelerator and waiting. At least the soundtrack goes hard. It's not just the driving, though. You'd think making it extremely clear which pedestrians were trying to hail you would be a priority, given how Crazy Taxi put giant floating icons and glowing circles around every potential customer, but nah, the only indication is a momentary waving animation that only plays sometimes. Combine that with the hilariously low draw distance and the fact that the game runs at a whopping 272p, and picking up passengers basically becomes a guessing game. Acquiring fares doesn't extend your time either. Gameplay takes place entirely within a preset shift duration. You will be permitted to finish your current fare if you've got a passenger come quitting time, so maybe I'm being a little bit generous by calling this a Crazy Taxi clone. The obvious inspiration aside, it's more like a Crazy Taxi roguelite. See, Tamsoft believes that the real issue with Crazy Taxi is that it doesn't have a linear career mode with an upgrade path. So on each shift, your goal increases by 1 or 2,000 yen. Some passengers will give you gifts for your cab, ranging from push bars and spoilers to baseball caps and... cat appendages?
The car is going to get you.
Your boss also upgrades the cab's performance periodically. When you're just starting out, the car tops out at a whopping 75 miles per hour. After an hour of puttering around the city center at rather pedestrian speeds, he'll boost your acceleration and allow the car to go 85. Ooh. The final part of progression actually pertains to the world map itself. In opening runs, players will surely notice the litany of Looney Tunes, Roadrunner-ass flat tunnels.
Oh, shit, this
Is this a Looney Tunes bullshit? Are you kidding me? It's a fucking texture! It's a texture of a tunnel!
where the fuck is... Oh, he can go, but he disappeared!
But eventually, these will start to disappear, and you can finally venture out of the claustrophobic city center into the countryside, including features such as Dirt Crater, obnoxiously winding parking lot, and apparently no fucking sidewalks. I'll be real, I'm not gonna play this long enough to unlock the whole map. Fuck that. This game is nowhere near competent enough for that to be worthwhile, and I doubt anything more interesting would be revealed through continued play. The only remaining interesting gameplay to discuss is how The My Taxi attempts to learn from Crazy Taxis 2 and 3. If you've never played those console-exclusive sequels, they introduced multi-passenger fares where you'd have to complete multiple stops after just one pickup. The My Taxi copies this concept, but presents it entirely differently. And by differently, I mean incomprehensibly. Sometimes you have to make a stop and wait for your passenger to get back in, other times you pick up someone's friend along the way. The arrows point you in the general direction of the destinations, but not towards waypoints like Crazy Taxis, which, in fairness, might have been a legal thing, but other games around the same time figured out how to get around that, so who the fuck knows, it's probably just laziness. My Taxi's... excuse me. The My Taxi's PlayStation 2 Origins seem to explain the game's bizarre rendering issues. I'm pretty sure what's going on here is that the original PS2 version was programmed to unload terrain outside the player's field of view, and nobody bothered to adjust the parameters when converting the game for the PSP's widescreen display. This game is just a clown show all the way around, and I love it for that. This is the exact sort of random bullshit I love unearthing and sharing with anyone who will listen. And hey, it's also giving me a new library of drum and bass VGM to use in videos. So now I'm kind of curious to explore other Crazy Taxi clones, though recent offerings don't inspire confidence. It's also kind of hard to justify spending money on something wholly derivative when there are so many good ways to play actual Crazy Taxi. Maybe it's time to make a video talking about those games, actually. I'm sure I'll have a completely normal and uncontroversial take.